Hey everyone, and welcome to the Amplitude of Tech podcast. I'm Sean Cordner, Chief Marketing Officer of Amplix. Today I had Karan Kashyap from Posh AI. He is the co-founder and CEO. Super smart guy, really interesting takes on AI. We talked a lot about how companies can implement AI and still maintain trust with their customers and a whole lot more. This was a great conversation. Hope you enjoyed as much as I did. All right, Karan Kashyap, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate your time today. Why don't we start with just a little bit about you and about Posh AI?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Karan. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Posh. And what we do and who we are is we're about an 8-year-old AI company. We consider ourselves a vertical AI company. So it means we're really focused on the domain of banking and credit unions and financial services versus, being horizontal platform. We kind of really focus on the vertical depth and domain expertise. We started out of a research lab at MIT about 8 years ago. So myself and my co-founder, a lot of our founding team, we're all grad students at MIT working on natural language understanding, AI, machine learning, speech recognition. And so we were kind of in the space of large language models and what eventually became ChatGPT before it was cool. And we kind of had the early view in academia of like where things were heading, right? So you get a glimpse in the research labs of what's going to actually become kind of mainstream in the coming, years or decades sometimes. It definitely happened a lot faster than we predicted, but we started the company because we kind of felt that there was going to be a transformation, a revolution, if you will, for what was possible with this technology. And we decided to go vertically focused, partly because, we happened to have some early traction with some credit unions and community banks based in Boston. There was an incubator here called DCU Innovation Center. That's like, one of the biggest credit unions. And so we kind of got exposed to this market pretty early. But we also thought that, it's better sometimes to be the best at something than to be like good at a lot of things. And with how quickly we were kind of seeing technology moving and AI moving, we thought, hey, it's probably wise for us to go really deep than try to go broad. And so we started building conversational AI, more like customer facing AI assistants, which during COVID became like a really smart move because we saw a lot of traction during the pandemic when we had branch closures and call volume spiked. And then we ended up expanding our product suite into a lot of employee facing use cases too. And that really happened because, with ChatGPT and LLMs getting better, like we obviously wanted to adopt those technologies, but our customers were not so excited to deploy those customer facing at that point to their customers, right? And so, we talk about like the cutting edge AI, and it's like, hey, are you ready for us to like deploy this in your member facing voice AI? And they're like, no, we don't want to do that yet. And so we figured that by getting into employee facing use cases, like knowledge training and all these other use cases, we could almost get our customers to like start adopting the newest technologies, but also give ourselves the ability to grow into new product surface areas, but also to kind of like do our own testing of these cutting edge models in a safer environment and then progress them into our customer member facing products as well. All that to say now, we have like 7 or 8 different products at Poshna, depending on how you skin the cat. And we work with about 150 financial institutions today across the country.
I mean this in a complimentary way, but you're like a walking cliche, right? A couple of MIT students get in on a technology early, build the startup and scale it in the market. So you said something that I just couldn't let go. You said you were into the LLM space before it was cool.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like it's becoming not cool again. We're having this conversation on the heels of it's graduation season, and a lot of colleges have had people that have gone up and given the address, and they're getting booed when they mention AI. I wonder, do you have any kind of commentary on what's going on in the zeitgeist right now that is giving AI a bad name, and what do you think it means for adoption?
Yeah. I mean, one thing to just acknowledge is just the speed of change that's happening right now. We're seeing change in an order of magnitude that was like incomprehensible not that long ago, but today we've become kind of used to it, right? Like when a new model drops every few weeks now and it's like benchmark wise, improving and improving and improving on top of prior generations just a few weeks before, it's not that surprising anymore. Like we just like become accustomed to these things. Whereas like 2 years ago, that was like, it would have been quite shocking if we saw this pace today. And I don't see that pace necessarily changing. And I think that creates a lot of anxiety in people, especially in new grads. And you talk about like college graduations and stuff. Like we know a lot of new grads right now are having a hard time finding jobs. And I think it's because a lot of companies are able to solve a lot of the entry level types of use cases with AI, which was a lot of the reason that you would hire new grads. software engineering programming, like Claude Code, Codex from OpenAI, a lot of these models are arguably better than the intern you could hire or the new grad you can hire. So I think that definitely causes like that sentiment. And I think that sentiment might only get worse as AI continues to like solve harder and harder problems in the enterprise.
The people listening to this, they may be in a position where they or someone in their org is making decisions about hiring that entry level developer. Is
Yeah.
it short sighted to have that idea that I can replace that skill set with a better skill set at a lesser cost? Presumably, right? We don't really know how token usage
Yeah.
costs are going to progress over time, but is it short sighted that they're not making the investment in the human capital that's going to pay off in the long run?
Uh, I think maybe, yeah. I mean, you could argue that like without hiring the young folks today, you're not gonna have enough like experienced labor tomorrow, right? And I think that argument is fair. Where I think it could potentially break down is that you're not accounting for like the continued growth of the models themselves. I mean, today it's like a lot of new grad kind of like level one, level two engineering work that's like fairly automatable or like confidently automatable. You still want humans to code review. We still have a lot of like human driven processes, CI/CD reviews, all that stuff. But AI is part of the review processes now. When you do code review pipelines, you often have AI agents doing the code review alongside the senior software engineer who's doing a sanity check as well. I don't think it's like that big of a leap to say that senior engineers and even like really solid engineers in the future are going to be replaced too. But I think it changes the equation a little bit. Like it's not about like who writes the best code or who can solve this like complex problem. I think it's a lot about like what defines a good product now. The sense of good design, the sense of like you know creativity. Like AI is good at pattern matching, and it's doing some novel thinking too, but a lot of it is like pattern matching. And you if you want to build something like really unique and impressive, you can't really do that just by pattern matching, right? You have to like make some unique observation or do something kind of novel. And I think that's kind of where humanity is like especially good at doing that today, like the creativity, the empathy. Like AI kind of can solve problems, but it doesn't solve problems through the empathy factor because it doesn't really empathize, right? So like if I'm a new grad today, I think you kind of think about like the traditional software engineer is maybe not the thing I would invest in. Maybe you invest in this like new concept of like a one man product army, if you will, right? Like, how do you develop the skill set to have like good design instincts, good product development instincts, good engineering instincts? I think that is like really valuable today. Like, it's almost like you want to hire people that could start their own companies, and you want to bring that skill set into your company, right? And I think that's where the bar is changing today.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the powerful things about AI is, how it can help you take a startup to market so quickly, right? And so you can play that out at the product level as opposed to the business startup level.
Right.
So I guess what you're advocating for is a bunch of product owners that are entrepreneurial in their mindset using AI as the tools, but still these grads need exposure to the AI and to the tool set, right?
Right. And they need exposure into the industries too, right? Like if you're building for banking, I mean, I did this as a new grad and I learned a lot over a lot of hard lessons and a lot of time. And I'd say I'm better maybe now than I was when I started, but like you have a learning curve in these real world industries, right? You have a new grad coming out who like doesn't quite understand how, the intricacies of a particular industry work. And yet, you join a company that's building for that industry. You have to learn that stuff. But I think the new grads have one advantage, which is like they're probably more comfortable with change now because they've lived through it, and they're probably more comfortable with like breaking out of molds in a way, right? Like I think more experienced software engineers are kind of accustomed to like their role having been software engineering. Somebody else was doing product management. Somebody else was doing QA. Somebody else was doing design.
Right.
I think new grads now and maybe the educational systems are evolving or adapting to this too. I think they're probably getting exposure to that whole spectrum, right? And so, yeah, you can have AI write great code, but you can also have AI suggest like good product ideas, but you still need somebody to make the decision. And I think that decision capability is like the real like hard thing today, right? Like I would optimize for people that are intellectually pliable and can like learn these skills and all that, but that are also just good at making decisions.
Yeah.
Like taste,
Um,
taste is important.
Yeah. Yeah, taste and creativity, these are things that AI is never really going to just by definition of what those things are, right? They're
Mhm.
never going to be able to capture that. I wonder also is the fact that AI now, and at least the models that we're talking about, is being probabilistic as opposed to deterministic. Does that mean that it's got a ceiling in its current iteration of how far it can actually go in terms of replacing humans? I think code is a good example where because it's probabilistic, it's making a prediction of what the right answer is in developing that code, but that's really where hallucinations come from.
Mhm.
And you can't really have it hallucinating in your code. Things are going to break, right? I'm sure there's ways that you could set up adversarial models that check the other model, whatever. But
Yeah.
just generally speaking, do you think there's kind of a cap there?
I don't think so. I mean, are humans not probabilistic models ourselves? Right? Like,
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
you know what I mean? So, I mean, I think you just have to have the right guardrails. Like, I could hire an intern that like tries to push really bad code, and I would hopefully have a code review process where somebody else proofreads them. And it's just the same idea with AI agents now. You have different models proofing the other, trying to prevent bad things from actually getting into the real world. But yeah, I think, I mean, I don't know. Like, I think if you ask yourself like the best AI models that you interact with today, are they um, potentially coming up with different ways of saying something? Yeah, but then so does your spouse or your best friend too. You know what I mean? So like, I think that's just the nature of thinking is somewhat probabilistic.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But also look at all the problems that we humans create because we're probabilistic thinkers, huh?
Yeah, but I mean, code is deterministic by execution,
Yeah.
and AI models can write code. So I think you can definitely lean into both. Like you can lean into the intelligent probabilistic side when it's warranted, and you can lean into the determinism of code when it's warranted, and you can probably solve like really complex things if you orchestrate those two really well, right? From what Posh does, for example, like when we build voice agents or digital agents, we are orchestrating both. We have LLMs doing understanding and reasoning and decision making, but we also have code that's making sure that we're executing things deterministically when it's important to do so.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said towards the beginning of Posh, and you had customers that were not comfortable yet putting AI in front of their customers on the front line.
Mhm.
Um, I think that we're seeing that friction and those barriers start to fall, probably because AI has become, consumerized, and the consumer is getting more familiar and more comfortable with it. So businesses are more comfortable putting it in there. But I wonder from your perspective, like what was that hesitation? Was it just because of the state of the technology and where it was at that
Yeah.
point?
Yeah, I mean, new things are always a little scary, and I don't think financial institutions by nature are known to be trailblazers on these new technologies, right? They want to be a little bit kind of careful, and I think that's probably because of regulatory pressure too. If you're in an unregulated industry, like the cost of being wrong may not be that high, but the nature of what like FIs do and the industry that they're in, both regulator wise, but also like the nature of the actual task, the cost of being wrong can be quite high. And so I think that's good and bad, right? It's good in the sense that like you acknowledge that these are really sensitive things and you don't want to like, rush into these things kind of haphazardly. But it's bad in the sense that like sometimes you swing the pendulum too far in the direction of conservatism. And you're almost in a situation where like, yeah, like, people that are a little bit more willing to take risks. And I wouldn't really say it's a risk if you like construct it well, right? Like it's just applying a technology. But those who are kind of earlier movers like can have a compounding advantage. And I think the risk that I am seeing potentially is in like fintechs and kind of the more tech forward DNA companies, like maybe being a bit more like bold in adopting these technologies and having those competencies and stuff to do so. And a lot of the market, the traditional FI market, especially some of the smaller part of the market, are either skeptical still or just don't know where to start, and
Mm.
that's risky. I think that's a little dangerous.
You operate in a highly regulated industry, but it's also a high trust industry.
Hmm.
And I think that we're at a time where our society is lacking some trust, especially in institutions, especially in financial institutions.
Hmm.
So I can't help but think that there's got to be something to bridge the gap between the consumer, the user, and the AI technology that allows for that trust, for them to trust the technology that they're talking to from a security perspective. But also, I think there's just something kind of innate in us that we're good at picking up when something's a little bit off, especially when it comes to something emulating a human, right? So if I could just kind of deliver a little diatribe for a second, but in marketing, right, we have user experience design. And in my mind, user experience design is bridging the gap between a function of a technology or engineering that went into that technology and how humans behave. Interfacing with a computer is different. It's a different modality than how we interact with other human beings.
Mhm,
And so I feel like that allows us to compartmentalize that experience a little bit. And it doesn't set off our trust radars that this isn't a human experience that I'm having. But
mhm,
by design, I mean, even in your tagline, it's service that feels human and
mhm,
AI that works like a teammate. So you're trying to emulate human interaction. And I think that blurs the lines, and that might be a challenge to building trust. So I'm wondering, how are you designing your AI in a way that allows for that trust and bridges the gap between that technology and human behavior?
Yeah. And I think, I mean, you have to again think about like who the end user is. Like in some cases, the end user is like the actual customer member of the FI. And in other cases, the end user is actually the employee at the FI as well. We're seeing right now, I mean, the larger institutions are still a little bit wary of like the actual end user facing stuff. But like the customer, I mean, they're quite heavily adopting the employee facing, like the idea of empowering humans, superpowering your humans, like that I think right now is like where 80% of the market is like most excited about AI. We haven't yet seen like that full embracement of like customer facing technologies. I think it's going to happen though. I think it's inevitable. It's just like that crawl, walk, run model. And when you think about like the human emulation, I mean, one like we're focused on also like human empowerment. So like the end user, like the customer, might be talking to you as a human without realizing that you're being superpowered by an AI on your side, right? And so you kind of have the human in the middle. So like, yes, it is a human interaction for me, from my perspective, but like you are quite enabled by AI on your side, right? And the other side of it is like when you're directly interacting with AI, I think today like digital channel communication is like quite good, right? You use ChatGPT, you type with it. Google search today is conversational now too, since like last week. But it's one of those things where like the digital side is quite good. Voice is where like you get into the uncanny valley still, and especially like those video avatars. I don't think any of them today are like really at the point where they're fully like immersive. You know what I mean? Like they look good, and then you try to like stress test their emotional responses and stuff, and they struggle to like emulate anger or other kind of emotions besides just like professional smiling. But voice is advancing quite well. We are seeing a lot of advancements in the last year around like true like empathy, the ability to like extend that to other languages as well, and like the ability to also like just respond with the latency required to feel human like, and the intonations and stuff. So I think we are in a period where like even that's going to be quite good if it's like not arguably kind of already there now. But the hard part, I think, with voice versus digital, or like even the video stuff, is that you're right. Like humans bar for real or fake is like really high. And I think it's a hard problem if you're like trying to convince the end user that, oh, like this is actually a human. But I don't think that's the goal, right? And even from a regulatory perspective, you're not really trying to fool them into thinking it's a human. In fact, you should probably be disclosing that it's an AI, even if it was like really easy or not. Sorry, even if it was really hard to know that it was an AI, you should probably still disclose that it's an AI. But I think people just want like their problem solved in most situations, and they want to feel like the person that's solving their problem is smart. Like a lot of people's problems today are being solved with assistants like ChatGPT. Like people are following ChatGPT's advice maybe to an extreme, right? In a case where it's actually like too much so, like medical stuff. But for certain things, and this is especially true for banking and probably true for like, healthcare and stuff too. For certain things, I think people would still want either a human answer or a human second opinion, right? I think
mhm,
that's fair. But like it is actually surprising, I think, how much people are starting to trust AI agents when they deem that AI agent as intelligent. I think the problem that the industry faced was like, even a year or two ago, AI agents were not deemed intelligent. And so people just didn't like really give them a chance. I think that's shifting a lot now, to your point, because people are using products like Claude and ChatGPT in their daily lives, and they're like, oh wow, yeah, this is like probably smarter than like people I work with or like I'm friends with, right? Like just in raw intelligence.
I mean, definitely in raw intelligence. But, just as an example, coming out of the pandemic, Zoom usage had taken over, obviously, and that's how people were keeping from getting lonely. They were connecting with family members and friends over Zoom. They had done some studies that basically you can't get that same fulfillment of a human interaction that you can through, you know, over Zoom that you can in person, because you're missing little micro expressions. You're missing nuance that the video just doesn't pick up. And I think to some extent they don't really know 100% why that is, but they know that you don't get that same fulfillment. So I think you're right. The approach shouldn't be let me try to fool these people, right? It should be disclosing and building trust in the competence of the model that you're talking to. Because for me personally, that's the challenge that I run into with a lot of these, like a chat bot or a voice bot or something. I'm always trying to press zero to get out to a human being, because if I'm calling customer service, it's because something's really messed up,
Mhm.
and like I'll let a lot go. But if something is really messed up, that I need to talk to someone, because I feel like it's a complex situation that requires some explanation. And I just don't trust that this thing is programmed in a way. But that's probably old thinking, because it's not programmed in the sense
Yeah.
that it used to be programmed, right? It's not a decision tree per se. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But to go back to the original question, I think having a human-centered design approach is the right place to start for somebody that's implementing these kind of things, right? Because it shouldn't be purely about productivity or cost savings or efficiency or whatever. It shouldn't be about improving your metrics. It should be about, in your space, creating a better customer experience.
Yeah, or whoever the end user is, doesn't have to be a customer. Yeah, I want to double click on something you said there, which is like you called in because something was like really messed up, right? And so one just quick comment, like a lot of people that we see calling have tried to self solve that issue before, and the voice channel is often the last resort for a lot of people. I think you see that especially with the younger people, like don't want to call. You know what I mean? It's like I'd rather not call if I don't have to. Definitely don't want to go in person usually, but also certainly don't want to call. And so they try to self-serve with things like search or, digital assistants and stuff, to an extent. So on one hand, you can start to bring AI into those channels as well, like AI in those channels where like the uncanny valley isn't like quite there with voice, where like technically you could have a voice agent that could solve your problem, but you may not give it a chance just because like you're like it's clearly an AI, it's robotic sounding, whatever, right? Even if the AI technically was smart enough to solve your problem, like a lot of people may not just give it a chance just because they're like, I don't like AI, I've had bad experiences in the past, I'm going to zero out. But many of those people we've seen are still using search bars, and almost everybody I know still uses Google search despite the fact that it's an AI tool now, right? And so making search better, making self-service better on like non-voice channels, I think is a really smart move to just like, solve a lot of pain in the beginning, like where it's stemming from. And surprisingly, like a lot of our, well, not necessarily our customers, but like the market in general haven't like really been thinking about AI transformation in those like simpler channels. Like I think everybody thinks about like, oh, voice AI, it's like, cool and sexy, but like everybody has a search bar, and not many people I've seen have like really thought through like, hey, how do you make the search experience better? Because like people who call in have often tried to search first and didn't get the answer they wanted, or just like it didn't do a great job of getting to the intricacies. Maybe they had a hard problem, to your point. But yeah, that's like low hanging fruit, and search is like used a lot, right? Probably arguably a lot more than like chat is used actually. And then the other thing that you said that was interesting was like, yeah, like maybe the AI can solve those problems now, and you've like maybe like you give it a chance now than maybe a year ago, or like kind of ignoring past experiences because you're seeing the technology getting better. Or you give it a chance now because you had an experience with a different company, different industry where their AI was good, and you're like, oh, like this one retail company, like that was a pretty good experience, and maybe my bank is good now too. Let me try that out. And so we're seeing some of that too. But one thing we are seeing is like, AI doesn't have to solve everything, right? AI can know what it's good at solving and what it's not good at solving. LLMs are intelligent to understand the situation and then decide whether to react or not. And one way to not react is to recognize the things that are actually worth just connecting you to a real person for. And it's not necessarily because the AI can't solve it, but it's because like whoever, the higher power of this model is, whether that's the AI itself reflecting on its data or whether that's like the human overseeing the AI, has decided that this particular topic, despite the fact that AI could probably solve it, is one that it's better for a human to solve. And maybe regulators decide that. Maybe regulators say like, hey, I don't care how good the AI's financial advice is. We just don't want AI giving financial advice. And it's like, like I'm recognizing a conversation that this is leading towards financial advice. I as an AI model, like could definitely give you great advice, but I'm just going to connect you to somebody because I've been told that I can't do this. Right. And so we're seeing this like concept of what I call like mini agents or specialized agents. It's this idea that you don't have to have this like overarching AI that does everything. you could say, hey, I'm going to build like specialized AI that does these things, and then have this like router AI agent that recognizes what the person wants. And if it's something that we know one of the specialized agents can do, like sure, let the specialized agent do it. But if the person that you're interacting with is like not that keen to talk to, AI, or they're asking for something that like either we don't know we don't have an agent to route to, or that we've decided that for these things it's just better to have a human, then get it to a human. And so you might call, and it might just say like, hey, thanks for calling, like please describe your situation so I can best figure out how to help you. And you might be totally okay doing that with an AI. It's like, okay, sure, I'll say what I want. And then you might just have a human answer and say, yeah, hey, I can help you with that. Or an AI agent says, hey, yeah, I'm an AI agent that's designed to solve this problem. Let's solve this problem. Right? That
Yeah.
could, it could be over voice or digital.
Yeah, I think the space that you're in financial services, somebody calling their bank or their credit union, sometimes that customer could be anxious about their finances. They could be ashamed about their finances. So knowing when and when not to deploy AI, I think is important. Same thing in the healthcare space, that you don't want to hear that you've got cancer from an AI bot, right? So
Right.
how does in practice, how do you go about determining what are the things that you can or should automate versus not? And I don't mean necessarily from a technical or, like you were saying, a capability perspective, but more from a human perspective.
Yeah. Well, I think it's both. I think it is the technical and the human side. But yeah, the medical diagnosis, like maybe you don't want AI to do that because it's such a empathy driven thing, right? For things like collections, though, like you could argue both ways. You could say
Right.
like financial hardship is a very empathy driven thing, but at the same time, people have this like feeling of embarrassment, and they might actually prefer to have an AI because no one's judging them. Like they don't feel like the
Mhm.
sense of being judged or whatever, right? I think you have to think about like AI capability. And I think the capability side is like, yeah, like first of all, like regulatory wise, are we okay? Because if regulator says something, like doesn't matter whether, the technology is good enough or not. But when it comes to technology capabilities, can we design something that's reliably safe? And then can we design it that's reliably a good UX as well, good user experience? And if both of those things are true, then the question is like, is it a good human experience too? Like forget like if a user engages, like, is it a good flow? Sure. But like, should an AI actually be having this conversation? I don't know if there is a right answer necessarily. I think it's like very case by case. Might even be personal, right? Like the organization that's deploying the AI might have their preferences, but maybe the
Mm.
person using the AI has their own preferences too. And who's to say what's right or wrong? I think the best answer is maybe choice.
Yeah, and everybody's preferences are going to be different, right? It's
Yeah.
it's really hard to account for that. But yeah, I like the idea of choice, and I think at least just having the awareness to consider that question before you go into designing how AI fits into your customer experience is, Jesus. Um, I don't know how to turn that off. I don't know why.
But what is that?
It's a Zoom call, but I've got all
Okay,
my do not disturbs on.
I
You
see.
could tell I'm old, man.
Got
I,
it.
I
Got
don't
it.
know.
All good.
Kylie, we can leave this in. We can demonstrate what a dinosaur I am here. So anyway, just, I think if you're going to at least consider that question, then
Yeah.
you're already a step ahead, right? You're having empathy for the people calling in, and you're making some
Yeah.
intentional decisions as opposed to just deploying something for other reasons. We talked about disclosing that you're talking to or dealing with an AI up
Mhm.
front. And I agree that's the right practice in most cases, but there's two sides to that coin, right? Because on one hand, if you disclose it, some people are going to be skeptical immediately and already kind of on their toes. And that could prime them for a bad experience the rest of the way through. But on the other side, if it's not disclosed and they find out that it's an AI later, does that collapse the trust? So how do you approach making that decision and kind of designing how you disclose that?
Yeah. I mean, this is again like where regulators are sometimes like just making the decision for you. I think the general regulatory posture right now is that you should be disclosing that it's an AI. I don't know if different states and stuff will have their own like stuff, but I think the general like majority consensus right now is that you're supposed to disclose. Yeah, I mean, I think that's just a good practice. Like as a human, I'm just thinking about this from like just the human lens, right? As a consumer, even if I don't know that it's an AI, something might feel off for me if I realize later that it is and it never said so. Not that I would be like offended or something. It's just like it just feels disingenuous, right? And maybe it's just like, the broader climate right now that makes me feel that way. Maybe in like a few years I won't feel that way because like it's just gonna be common sense that like anybody you call is most likely AI. But yeah, right now it feels like it would be the right thing to do. to disclose. Yeah.
The first personal experience that I had with a really good conversational AI was when I called my mobile phone carrier, and the voice answered, and it was a very chipper, happy sounding voice. And it was like, "Hey, Sean, what can I do for you?"
Mm.
And I, I just started talking to it. I didn't, like there was something in me that was like, oh, wow. But then I just started talking to it. And then I realized a little bit later, and I came away from that with a little bit of a chuckle and actually impressed at the experience and a little bit delighted at the experience.
Yeah.
But as it's become more ubiquitous, I think what I'm trying to sit with is the not knowing, right? You
Yeah.
don't know when you're talking on a chat on a website or something. You don't always know until it's further down the conversation. And in real life, if you can call social media real life, but like when you're looking at posts on social media and you're looking in the comments section, sometimes it feels like all of it's AI, like just AI talking to AI bots, but you don't know. And so there's no point in interacting because it probably isn't a human, but you don't know if it's a human. So I think it's just that it's unsettling to be in this position now in our world where you can't determine who you're talking to.
Yeah. You don't know whether media that was generated is synthetic or a human design. I think in some cases we don't really care. We consume that content as entertainment. But yeah, when it's like when the stakes get real, when it's like real decisions that impact your life, maybe you do care to know.
Yeah. Yeah. If it's a cute cat video, I'm happy to accept. I'll pretend it's real and move on with my life. Right. But
Yeah.
all right. So in that vein, how has people's expectations of their interactions with AI evolved, and where do you think we are today?
Yeah. I mean, I think we have like mass adoption now. Like, that wasn't necessarily the case a couple years ago. Hmm. I think it's weird now to like meet somebody who hasn't tried something like ChatGPT. It's certainly weird to meet somebody who hasn't used Google search recently and seen that it's like, AI powered answers and stuff. I think I think people are starting to change their perceptions on like the capability of AI after having used these assistants. And that's where the anxiety and stuff comes into, right? It's like, oh, this is awesome, but it's also really scary because then you start to question like, okay, one, like what makes me special as a human? Like, what am I bringing to the table? And I mean, again, that's like empathy, the in person stuff, the things that I'd say go beyond just like simple workflows or simple answers. But then you get into like the harder stuff that's starting to get automated too, and you're starting to use these models and these consumer technologies, and you're like, wow, I'm seeing firsthand that it's like doing like the hard things too. I mean, early on, people were using it to like write poems and like, proof edit, like a proofread a copy, right? But now we're having it like create novel cocktail recipes. Here's what I have in the fridge. Give me something that I can make with it. And it does a really good job of like coming up with something, right? And giving you like how to cook it, and then the end result's like quite good. I think the thing that we're gonna start seeing like a lot of concern is when it goes beyond just like the white collar realm of stuff, right? And we're starting to see like where robotics is heading. Again, it's using a lot of the same breakthroughs that powered just the white collar side, which is more like an AI model behind a screen and a keyboard. But once it starts getting physical, I think that'll be like another big like milestone, and I think we're starting to see that a little bit, but like we are not really quite there yet. But yeah, the economic implications already are huge. And the economic implications are going to continue to get bigger and bigger with the white collar side of these models like getting better. And I think like once it gets into the physical world, like that's when things get like, quite dramatic. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the timeline is for stuff like that. Like it's hard to say.
It's been kind of interesting to me to see how quickly something like Waymo
Hmm.
or self-driving in a Tesla, to the extent that it is self-driving, has been accepted by people. I mean, I really that's a situation where there are very much high stakes, and I fully accept that humans are not good at driving, right? But my intuition is that there are things that I know about driving that AI can't, right? I can make eye contact with somebody and see if they see me or what their intentions are, right? I can look at this car that's beat up and has a thousand dents on it and think this is someone I should probably stay away from, right? Or
Yeah.
just my past experiences I can draw from. And I also realize that intuitive thinking is a heuristic and not necessarily a rational way to move through the world. But for me, it's just something that might be more of a barrier for me to get into that car than it is to trust Claude to review my lease for my new apartment and have it call out anything that's weird.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The self-driving car stuff, that's a good point. That's where regulators are also, again, like kind of impacting what's possible, like whether things can go on highways or where it can be used and stuff. And then you have those situations right now where like you still see like the smartest models, like the ones that are powering Waymos, are getting stuck in cul-de-sacs and going in circles, or, encroaching into like a police scene, which they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny too, because like 99% of the time it can be amazing. And then the 1% of the time, like, it's kind of like the LLMs, before I think we found ways to mitigate like hallucinations and stuff, but the 1% is still real, right? It's an edge case, but it's still real. But like once that last tail end of stuff gets solved, I think that's when like you see like a dramatic explosion of adoption and stuff too. Cause it's like, oh, now it's like, it's actually real, right? Like you didn't see like enterprises like adopting AI models as quickly as they are right now, even just a couple years ago, because even a couple of years ago, that 1 or 2% issue was like still big enough where it blocked like real adoption. But today that's like dramatically less, or you have mitigation approaches, and now it's like blowing up in enterprise. And then I think the same thing will happen in the physical world too.
Yeah, did you see the Waymo DDoS attack that someone did on a neighborhood? They ordered a whole bunch of Waymos into one block, and it
Yes,
ended.
yes, yeah. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's hilarious. But I have a buddy from high school that's a truck driver, and he drives into an 18-wheeler, and he drives into Manhattan pretty frequently,
Hmm.
sometimes 2-3 times a day. And I can imagine an AI self-driving truck doing long haul from, here to, I'm in New Jersey, from Jersey to the Midwest or something, but I cannot imagine it trying to navigate through New York traffic. I
Mm-mm.
feel like it would be too cautious. You have to drive like a maniac if you're going to make it through driving in New York City, right?
Well, that's why they have people now, like letting the truck do the long haul by itself. But then once it
Mm.
gets into like the hard part, somebody remotes in with like a VR headset
Oh,
and actually
wow.
takes control of the steering wheel remotely.
Like a
Which
live
is which is like
mile.
which is human in the loop. It's kind of funny. It's like the concept of a virtual assistant escalating to a human when like the conversation gets hard. It's like basically what a self-driving truck is doing too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild. Wait, what other, I guess we're taking a bit of a tangent here, but what other interesting use cases do you see that you think are going to, start popping up in everyday life?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're starting to see like a lot of people becoming entrepreneurs that were hindered by the inability to like build an app or a website, right? Like that's
Mm.
becoming way more accessible now. So like, I think we'll see like a lot of people like pursuing passion projects. Even if it's like a side little business. I think we're going to see more people like doing that. Ideas are now actually even more valuable, right? Because the execution of it is becoming more accessible. Uh, and then I think you're going to start to see like more personalization and more proactiveness, right? I think a lot of people think about like, oh, AI is like so good for coding and customer service and stuff. Somebody is like triggering that, like a person is prompting the AI to go write a piece of code, or a person is asking for something and then the AI responds back. I think we're starting to see the shift now where like the AI itself is like kind of always on. That's like what we saw with like Claude bot and some of these things that are happening is you just like have it continuously running on servers. It's expensive as heck. And like these models are getting like cost effective and computes, becoming more accessible too. But you need to solve that cost problem to have like this always on AI that's just thinking about you. Like
Mhm.
your own AI agent in Netflix that's thinking about you all the time, that kind of already exists and it gives you recommendations. But what if we took that to like other parts of for our lives? Then you get into like, proactive service. Like as soon as something happens or doesn't happen, you have your own AI agents. It's like, hey, by the way, I went ahead and did this, or you want me to do this real quick? Just give me an approval and I'll do it for you. Just preventing problems. And then, from like a coding standpoint, it's like, you know, AI is able to like go and write custom software for an individual, right?
Mm.
Like companies build software for like a large number of users. What if software was built for an individual user, like tailored to them, their preferences, whatever that is? That gets really interesting because software at that point is just an application. And you don't know, like, it's so hard to forecast this stuff because like it's dramatically different than what we're used to today. But like if people do just like really become loyal to a virtual assistant, like their ChatGPT or their Claude instance, you can imagine like that is the application for everything that they work with, right? Either that agent is talking to other agents to do stuff like being an Airbnb or whatever, which is kind of happening already, or that agent is serving user interfaces as well on like a micro level, right? And I think ChatGPT is trying to do that with like PFM now with their, financial literacy, financial wellness stuff that they've been rolling out. We'll see where that goes. Again, I think a lot of the database systems, the customer data platforms that power are not so inclined to like let ChatGPT and Claude just like become the interface for all the hard work they've done over the years. But it's interesting to think about, right? Like the idea that like, yeah, my ChatGPT serves up mini software applications for me that allow me to like have some GUI control over something I'm doing if it's not just conversational. If you need GUI control at all, right? And then everything else is just like my AI agent is handling for me, and I don't have to worry about like remembering passwords to all these applications or logging into different stuff. I just have it orchestrate everything. I mean that's a massive opportunity, I think. But yeah, I get excited about the NF1. Like, can products be built for the NF1? And that could
Mhm.
extend to movies and video games, and books. Like it's crazy, like the degree of personalization. But that can also exacerbate loneliness too. Like, imagine if I watch something that's designed just for me to love, and then I can't share it with somebody else because like literally is designed for me to consume, and somebody else may not have that same reaction.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that society is ready for something like that. I mean, it's
Hmm.
social media has been such a, how do I want to say it delicately? I mean, it's just been not a great experiment in what happens when you introduce technology in an unintentional way and just let humans run rampant with it, right? And
Hmm.
I would say the better angels don't come out when you do that.
Yeah.
So it's a little scary to think about how, and already you're starting to see younger generations are using the primary use case for, the younger generations for AI right now is friendship, for lack of a better term,
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
whereas people in my generation, Gen X, we're using it for search, like you were talking about
Yeah.
before. I mean, I rarely go to Google anymore. I ask Claude because I can create a whole bunch of context and I can really kind of dial it in. It just seems to understand more. I feel like it's a better experience than what I'm getting with Gemini when I'm,
Mhm.
trying to do that process as well. So, and it knows me because I use it as a personal assistant, just
Right.
the way that you were talking about, right? It's just right now it doesn't act for me. I haven't built agents behind it, right?
Right.
Because like I said before, I'm a dinosaur, but eventually it'll be so easy to build an agent that someone like me can do it. So I was talking to a guy named Ed Kiesling, who's the chief AI officer of progress.com, and he's going to be on the podcast. We had a planning call. And one of the things that we were talking about, you kind of brought up, which was what's the future of SaaS? Because it seems like something like Claude could very easily be the interface that
Mhm.
is plugged into and integrated with all these other applications that you use.
Yeah.
And the example I gave him was in Amplix here, we're rolling out AI slowly. We've got use cases identified and a small group of people that are, starting to work within the enterprise Claude instance that we have. And so it's connected to our CRM, it's connected to Power BI, it's connected to all this stuff. People don't go into Power BI like they were to create reports. They're not going into the CRM like they
Mhm.
were to create reports. They're doing it all through Claude, and it's creating these, highly customized and very specific reports that we weren't really able to get to. And it's an easier interface to just have that, conversation as opposed to hunting around in a GUI. What do you think is going to happen with SaaS?
Yeah. I think if you're literally just like a database, right? If that's like if you can like distill your SaaS product down to like just a database with some like designs on top of it, I think that's harder to like justify unless that database is really hard to like action on from a different intelligent system, or unless
Mhm.
there's like, a lot of like workflows and stuff that can only be done in some unique way. Otherwise, it's like yeah, a lot of SaaS today is just like building some buttons and drop downs and visuals that let somebody just make sense of data that's sitting behind the scenes. And yeah, I mean that's to your point. Like, that database could itself just be accessible by an AI agent that can do the same thing conversationally, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the concept of SaaS in that sense, I think yeah, that is something that like will probably change a lot. And I think all these companies are trying to figure out like, hey, what is our like existential like answer now? Um, but if you're doing something that like it just goes beyond the database itself, like the data itself, Like, for example, you may not trust even a smart model today, or you may not want to trust a smart model today to execute like sensitive workflows, right?
Mm.
And so that might be something that like is kind of defensible still. Or maybe your tool itself has its own like layer of memory too. Like the reason you like Claude so much maybe, and you wouldn't switch to Gemini necessarily, even if Gemini's newest model is like, let's say better than Claude's latest model that you're running on, you may not switch because Claude has developed an understanding of you. And it would be really hard for you to like either transport that understanding of you to Gemini, or you wouldn't want to go through that whole learning curve of Gemini again too. And so I think the concept of like personalization or this idea of memory in applications becomes a very defensible proposition too, right? Like the system that learns you, and it's more than like is that data in a database? Sure, but it's not something that is just easily like extractable and like queried. You know what I mean? Or maybe it's not, right? But the things that I think are really quite defensible today is if you can create network effects, right? So like two-sided marketplaces where there's human trust on both sides is hard for an AI to just come in and take over. So like I think
Sure.
there are a lot of SaaS SaaS-esque things out there that are still defensible, but there's certainly a lot of SaaS to your point that, yeah, I don't know, like it could just be Claude hitting the same database.
Yeah, I was thinking that the current state right now is one of integration and interoperability and open source. And I wonder if a company like, let's say, Salesforce, what if they wall off their ecosystem to other AI models,
Yeah.
implement their own model, right? That would be, and that's probably not a good state to be in this kind of feudal
Yeah.
state of software where everyone's walling off their own products, right? So, hopefully the incentives are to remain open and remain connected as opposed to reduce that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you have to think about these AI agents as just like they're all like invocations of really smart people that can do work, right? That's like a good analogy.
Mm.
And I think the way people are trying to monetize their platforms is changing in that lens. So it's not about like how many human seats am I serving? And maybe it's like, okay, how many agent runs am I allowing to hit my system, right? And that's more like a volume based pricing or consumption based pricing than just like a seat based pricing. So it's like we're trying to see a lot of like changes in how companies are thinking about pricing their services. So on one hand, it's the defensibility. Like, is my database itself like is that just like, you know, does that ruin the nature of my SaaS app? Like, if someone can just transport that data and then an AI agent can reason on it, like, is my SaaS app even like really worth anything? But I think if you say like, yeah, there is value in your data, or there is value in something that you have, it could be data, it could be workflow, whatever that is. The
Mm.
user is more likely going to be the AI agent than the human, right? Volume wise, and just like, where things are heading. And how does that impact monetization for companies?
Yeah. Make a hard left turn here. Like I said earlier, the second half of your tagline is AI that works like a teammate. So that has a very human connotation to me. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, on one hand, we have that motto, the both sides of that motto to imply that like, hey, it's both customer facing and employee facing, right? Like we are focused on automating the automatable things that are both customer facing and employee facing. But what that means is that like for things that are not automatable or shouldn't be automated or can't be automated because like regulatory stuff, you still need people for those things. We want to like empower those people to do those things too. And those are things that people should be doing. Like the easy stuff, like, the definition of easy is changing too, because what was hard is becoming easy, and that's going to keep happening. But the stuff that's still not easy is where I think like the human factor is so valuable. But even for that, like you want a human to have the AI superpower, right? The AI empowerment. And that's where we think about things at Posh. Like how do we get a human from base level to expert level, right? Like, and you see this when you hire somebody new. How do you ramp them up? Um, we have a product that helps with training, right? Conversational training and situational training. We have an AI agent assist, knowledge solution that helps with people on the job to get access information quickly. We're trying to allow people to automate workflows within that product as well. So like instead of having to go learn how to use some other system, it's like the AI agent for the employee on behalf of the customer, right? So I'm talking to you as let's say you're the customer in this case, and I'm the employee. Instead of like having to go like navigate some system to do something on your behalf, I can just ask my AI agent to do that. Maybe you could have asked your AI agent to do it too, but for whatever reason, either you didn't or we couldn't support that or whatever. But I have an AI agent that's allowed to do that. And then the other thing that we're looking at right now that's really important, a couple of things. One is around like expanding the superpower of language translation. Things like Google Translate and stuff, like you say something into the model and then you let it speak out what you said. But we're seeing now like a lot of innovation in real time AI. So like as I'm speaking right now, you could be hearing me speak in Spanish on your side.
Mhm.
Or you maybe could even see my mouth actually in real time, like looking like I'm saying those words in Spanish too, right? That's crazy. But the main thing for us too is like if we're empowering people with tools, how do we know that they're actually using it? And how does the organization that's like, paying Posh or like, investing in these tools, how do they measure the ROI and know that they're using it? So we are also like leaning pretty heavily into AI powered QA, right? Quality assurance and stuff too, which is like, hey, we trained you in a simulated context and we like got you to feel confident. But now how do we measure whether you're applying those skills to the real world? Or we gave you this AI knowledge assistant or agent assist type tool. How do we know whether our KPIs are actually being positively impacted at scale in the real world? Just because we gave you that tool, like there's no guarantee that you're actually using it the right way, right? So we're trying to see all these like agentic feedback loops between products and between like the different tools people use, but also the life cycle of like this customer service agent, right? And how do we use the shared brain, if you will, or like the communication between these applications or agents to like really not only superpower the employee, but also to give the organization confidence that it's working and they can then compound that further.
I hosted a fireside chat with Gary Sorrentino, the global CIO for Zoom, a couple of months ago in Philadelphia for a sim event. And one of the topics that we touched on, he likes to talk about EX plus CX plus DX
Mm.
equals TX. And what he means is employee experience plus customer experience plus digital experience equals total experience. And people in the room full of CIOs, a lot of light bulbs went off there, right? So my question is, when you are engaging with technology leaders and you start talking about this teammate and the employee experience, do you get the sense that most of them have thought about it from that perspective, or do you get the sense that this is kind of a new concept?
I mean, I think it's a new concept for a lot of people, just because again, like some of this stuff wasn't available a year ago, right? Some of this stuff just wasn't like. I mean, you could have said, yeah, obviously, if you empower your employees, it's going to impact our CSAT and NPS in a positive way. Like, yeah, that makes sense. But the specific approaches or applications that are possible today, like, just weren't possible yesterday. And so I think even if people like understand like the philosophy of what they should do or are doing, the way to apply it or actually practice it, like that's changing like at a crazy pace. And so yeah, I agree with that. I like that EX plus CX plus DX equals TX. That's nice. I think yeah, that's a good like North Star like philosophy, but the execution of it is like it's going to constantly be changing.
Yeah. What are you seeing that most of the technology leaders that you're engaged with are doing wrong? And how would you recommend that, the people listening to this start to address that in their own organizations today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think a lot of people are doing stuff right too. Like, I think the idea of like starting with employees, and like the crawl walk run mentality is it's very smart. I think that's a good way to think about things. Well, I alluded to this before, but like I think a lot of people also like conflate this this concept of like, oh, AI has to be all encompassing for it to really like check the box of agentic AI or whatever. It's like that's not true. Like you don't have to go like replace your entire IVR to get the value of AI. You could start by just handling after hours account lockouts, for example, and solve like a really meaningful high ROI, like arguably high volume problem that humans are okay having an AI help them for because they're like, they just need somebody to help them unlock their account or reset their password. And it's a good initial use case to get confidence, but it's not boiling the ocean, right? And I think we're trying to see some people like come to that realization more now of like oh, like we can actually start small even with customer facing AI. Like yeah, of course you don't have to like do the whole thing at once. The build versus buy stuff, I think we see a lot of that tension right now too. We didn't really talk about that too much on this session yet, but people like definitely underestimate how hard it is to build. Um, and they also overestimate how hard it is to build at the same time. Like you can get like a really great version one with AI assisted coding. And that's great. Like in a weekend, you see people on LinkedIn like, hey, this is what I built over the weekend. And like 3 years ago, I would have been like mind blown, like, oh my gosh, like this guy like wrote all this code in a weekend. That's amazing. Today it's like, oh yeah, everybody's doing that, right? Everybody's like has these like this weekend projects using, pick your AI coding tool and coming up with some like web page or something. Yeah, it's great. Um, I think people don't understand that they can prototype stuff that quickly. Like people are trying to realize that. But a lot of people don't realize how hard it is to actually like take that into a real production, long-term maintained solution. And, we're seeing a lot of like, regional larger customers and just players in the space in the industry. And I mean like banks and stuff that are building like in-house teams of engineers and AI experts, right? And it's like, oh, we're going to do this and that and that. It's like, great. When somebody builds this or that and that, who's maintaining it, right? Because is the person that's building it then moving on to the next thing and the next thing, or are they staying and like actually making sure that given how quickly things are changing, that what they built 3 weeks ago is still state of the art? Because in cycles today where like three month old things are becoming outdated, arguably, how do you know that by building in house you're actually giving your organization the best of what's possible? You're probably not, unless you have the ability to focus, or unless you get to the point where you're running always on AI agents that are doing it for you.
Yeah. Is there, in your space at least, are there some things that you say definitely build versus definitely buy?
Yeah, I was talking to like a pretty large bank CIO about this actually yesterday, and I forget like who said this phrase. So like I'll have to like look at it afterwards or we'll attribute it afterwards. But it's this concept of like uh, you know build what is actually going to differentiate you, but buy what's going to accelerate you.
Mm.
Right. It might have been like Jamie Dimon or something. I don't know exactly who it was, but it's like, yeah, if you're gonna like for the most part, you're just getting something. You just want something to accelerate you, right? Like it's like a tool that helps you move faster, or make a decision better, whatever. But it's not the core of what your business is about that is helping you win versus competitors. That's like creating that like real deep differentiation against like the people that you're either serving or competing against, right? Um, and the guidance there is like, yeah, like ask yourself, like, is this really something that's going to be a differentiable reason why we win? And if the answer is no, then it's probably not worth building. As tempting as it is, right? Because you might be like, oh, I could easily just like, vibe code this, replacement to the SaaS tool that we paid 20 grand a year for. Like, yeah, you can save 20 grand. Maybe that's depending on where you are or like, what other opportunity cost things you have and all that. Maybe that's not a bad decision, but like just don't underestimate the maintenance of these things, right? Because anytime you make a decision to build something, the building it in the first place is maybe 3% of that total effort of the equation. Like 97% hasn't happened yet. The 97% is the long-term maintenance evolution of these things, right? Yeah. And that's a good model, I think, that build what differentiates, buy what accelerates.
Yeah, I love that. That's very marketable. I'm going to attribute that to you and
Okay.
all of our social
And we can
media
do the
posts.
whole office thing. That says Karan by, Jamie,
Yeah.
whatever, whoever that was.
You said something about, oh, we're going to build this, and then is it still relevant in 3 months, or is it already outdated in
Yeah.
3 months? And I can't help but think that with the ease of building with AI and also deploying AI in discrete tasks or in places in the enterprise stack, is there a danger here that people are going to start to accumulate the AI version of technical debt?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And again, like it's hard to say like whether that's really a big deal or not, because again, you'll have more AI agents that you can then spawn to help you solve that technical debt. But yeah, I mean, it's like it's very easy to overcomplicate things, right? Like I think people are really good at doing that. So like you could imagine like you start with something that's really simple to solve for, and like, oh, I can just like do this myself. I don't need this product for it. And then you start running into edge case after edge case, and it's expanding the surface area. And pretty soon, like you're in like a pretty complicated situation because you've invested a lot of thought and time, maybe not like, as much time as you would have had to do like a few years ago, but still like substantial amount of thinking and time to get to this point. And then you're like, oh, actually, maybe I shouldn't have done this. And we're seeing this a lot with our customers, by the way. We have quite a few customers who spent like, a year or two trying to in-house something and then came to the same conclusion that like, yeah, we solved 80% of the problem quite well, but it's a 20% of the problem that like still gets us, right? And it's just like, is it really in our like best interest from a differentiation standpoint, like you talked about, to continue to invest to solve this 20% or not? And I think a lot of people realize that like it's not in their best interest, and it's better to go like just partner with the company that actually it is in their best interest. That company's interested to do that. That's what that company's purpose is. But your purpose is not to solve this problem. And so yeah, I mean, we've seen that quite a bit. We've seen that quite a bit where we've had customers come to us like essentially pre-sold on the use case because they've proven it themselves.
Mm.
Now they're just looking for the right partner to help them actually long-term scale it.
Now, if you are going the buy route for certain things, I wonder, how do you avoid vendor lock-in?
Yeah, I think that's really important. I like that like you have model optionality right now, and it's keeping each other on their, like everybody's on their toes, like all the big model builders, because they know how easy it is to switch models. it's literally one line to switch to whichever, vendor you're using in your code base. Um, yeah, I think the thing that we're seeing in the market, in our market too, is the longer tail of smaller players are kind of in a disadvantage in this situation because like they don't have the luxury of having too many partners for things. It's actually easier for them to consolidate, and it's really tempting to consolidate because like the price tag seems better, and it's like one less thing to worry about, like like less vendor due diligence and all that stuff. And it feels really good initially, like, oh, I have this partner that can do everything. But now you're kind of dependent on that partner to do everything, and innovate on everything. You just, yeah, like you're like super tied to something outside of your control, and that's risky, right? I think what's nice about having optionality, despite some of the headaches that come with it, because you have to like constantly be thinking about different things, is that you do have the ability to be best of breed where it matters, and you do have the ability to also kind of go more modular in your strategy if you want, right? And you're less like dependent on like some third party entity, like kind of determining in a lot of ways your future success. That's always risky to like have that dependency. Even if you like really trust them and love somebody, like that company might scale and start getting larger customers and their attention is now going somewhere else. Like you never know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that is a big issue. The vendor lock in is a real threat, I think, to the
Yeah.
institution success.
And they're probably trying to engineer that lock in as best as they can, right?
Oh,
It's in their
sure.
hands.
Yeah, I mean, look at the big publicly traded companies in the banking space. Like their whole business is around lock-in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're
Um,
designing contracts to like make it really hard to not be locked in.
right. A while back in the conversation, you talked about AI supercharging employees. And in my experience, in my career, I've rolled out software, enterprise software to large businesses. I've been part of that. And what I've seen is um, success of that software completely depends on adoption.
Hmm.
Can you get people behind it? Can you get them to see the shared vision? Can you get them to push through the friction of the learning curve and the uncomfortable feeling of doing something new and make that part of their day to day? The classic example that I've had in my career is rolling a new CRM out to salespeople, and they're just like, "We're not doing this." I've seen an Oracle CRM, like a 7-figure rollout get rolled back because salespeople just didn't adopt it. So
Mm,
I wonder, how do you go about priming your employees
mm.
to adopt this technology so that they actually can be supercharged?
Yeah, I mean, even on the customer side, right? Like even if AI gets really good and it can solve your problem, if you don't give it a chance, that didn't solve your problem, even if it could have. Same thing for employees. It's like the lead the horse to water concept, right? And that's a real cultural thing. I mean, I don't know if there's a right answer. Even in really good software companies, some of the best engineers, objectively, are the ones that are also like the most skeptical of AI tools. And like I don't know. Like sometimes you just see the click in people. They're like, oh yeah, like yeah, I tried it a few months ago and it just wasn't that impressive. And I kind of like had this like really like stronger version to that from my first impression. But I'm coming back at it, months later and like, wow, this is actually good now. Right. So I think you kind of need the person to also be willing to like periodically like give these tools a chance or give these applications a chance because they are changing at that pace. And I think people don't quite realize that compared to like, anything else we've been used to in the history of our lives. The pace of change right now is just remarkable.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So to that end, with the pace of change being what it is and the state of technology right now, AI specifically being so fluid, what's a piece of actionable advice that you would give to the listeners today that they should start thinking about or doing in their enterprise to be ready to have a successful AI deployment?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things you can do from a cultural standpoint is to like promote experimentation, right?
Mm.
And for regulated industries, I think that can be all scary. You can do that in a safe way. You can figure out how to do it in a way that's safe for you. But people are using AI tools in their daily lives. Like most of us are. Most employees of companies are. Um, but they've been kind of like I think taught or have heard stories about like getting punished or getting in trouble for like doing stuff in the enterprise. Solve that problem first. I think is
Mm.
important. Like give people the ability to think about how to use like good AI tools, right, to actually help make their lives easier in their work context. Forcing somebody to use a tool may not work, especially if they try to use that tool and it's not great or not great for what they're trying to do. Then they're just gonna like kind of be rubbed the wrong way, and they're gonna feel like, oh, I'm being forced to use this. Like but letting people have choice. I think we talked about that, right? Like the choice. It's like, hey, we're going to be open to tools. Like if you have a tool that you think would be really good, um, let's consider it. Like let's actually like take that through our due diligence process and give it a try, or like have some kind of. I've called it in the past a slush fund. Like
Mm,
I've called out that like a lot of our customers like budget in very strict annual cycles, and they're making decisions usually in like July or August of the stuff they're going to be doing in December of the next year.
mm,
Like not even this December, like next December, right?
yeah.
And that's crazy to me. Like I don't even know what model's coming out next week. I don't even know what, like the future of white collar work is going to be like in 6 months. And you're determining now in like 3 months what's going to happen in next December. You know, so I think like a lot of that needs to change too. Like, this is the culture of like innovation, a culture of speed. We often say that the best moat today is speed, like
Mm.
against competition. But like if you're able to have like a slush fund, like an evergreen innovation fund that like can fund these types of things, it doesn't have to be crazy either. Like think about the craziness of not doing it and falling behind. I think that's something that you can do too. So like encourage a culture of innovation, and then financially think about how to actually enable this too.
I think that's excellent advice. I love that. I haven't heard anyone suggest that, not explicitly when it comes to budget, at least. How would you recommend that they sell that to the C-suite and to the board?
I mean, it's the cost of like not taking risks right now. The riskiest thing you can do right now is nothing. And I think people should like realize that. And then if you like say, hey, I want us to have an innovation budget. And maybe there's already a chief innovation officer and stuff. So like hopefully there's some level of budget for that. But it needs to be grassroots. I think for a company to really change and embrace like becoming more AI pilled, it doesn't start top down. It has to start like bottoms up as well. And we need
That's
we
great
need we
advice.
need ICs to go evangelize tools and have the ability to actually like fund that as well.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to leave it. Karan Kashyap, thank you so much for your time and expertise. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.